podcast dedicated to the music, movies, and culture of Generation X.
What is up, Slackers, and welcome to another episode of the Stuck in the Middle podcast. I am your host, Jason Eck, and as I am recording this, it is actually Independence Day, July 4th, or as it's known in England, Traitors' Day. And to all my friends in the UK, I'm terribly sorry. It's a beautiful parcel of land here that we just had to have, and, taxes and tea just wasn't for us. But it is one of the most popular holidays in our home. But unfortunately, a lot of summer colds, like a lot of stuff going around, and we're also preparing for a vacation. And sometimes that limits what you're able to do, like in celebration. On top of it all, I may have mentioned it before, but, my wife really does legitimately love 4th of July. And we got married on July 5th. So when this drops on Wednesday, it will be my 20th wedding anniversary, but it will also be 25-year anniversary of when we first started dating. So it is a big deal. And honestly, I never thought this would happen. I grew up with a family where there was a lot of divorce. So the fact that, here we are 25 years strong, 20 years in our marriage is such a blessing. And I'm very blessed and I'm very pleased. And, like anything else in life, we have our ups and downs. Sometimes we get along famously. Sometimes we don't. And that's just life. And sometimes we have different ideas about parenting, about careers, about the house, the dog, cars, whatever it may be. But, what you hope that you can do is complement each other the best that you can. Which is sometimes difficult when a lot of our musical tastes are very, very different. Certainly our choice in films is oftentimes very different, although the ones that we both enjoy tend to be, amongst our favorites. So that's always cool. So to my beautiful wife, Maggie, happy anniversary. Very cool. However, when I was thinking about topics for tonight, I was going back and forth. Okay, we could do 4th of July movies, right? That's always fun. Great American anthems as far as rock songs. By the way, Born in the USA is not a Hey America song. So in case you don't know that, all these years later, it's not that. Excuse me. I also have a little bit of the summer cold. Oh my gosh. Oh, and just another thing, my pool is leaking and I can't get anyone to come out and just work on finding and eradicating a leak. They want to just, do the whole thing. And I just don't have the money to drop on replacing the whole liner right now. Too many things going on, particularly with a kid going to college in the fall. We just went ahead and got all that stuff done. So anyway, thinking about topics, and one of the things that I was reading on Twitter, which by the way, I do have, a Twitter, and it is where I probably post the least frequently. It's the only place that it basically, when the episode drops, it automatically goes ahead and it just sends a message and a link. Now, one of the things that I'm considering doing is, obviously there's a lot of hubbub about Elon Musk's Twitter, right? And what it is and how it's different. And one of the key things is, not to get into politics of it, but the cancel culture, right? Still very much a thing. And sarcasm, I've come to find out, which is my second language, is, I don't know, it's so easily misunderstood, even when, in my opinion, it's really obvious, right? So basically, a bunch of comedians, but one in particular recently, I'm not going to get into the whole story, I'm sure you've heard it all, was kind of being deplatformed by YouTube. Now, my YouTube content is minimal, admittedly, but I'm trying to find ways to make my life easier while also generating different types of content. I have failed in my workout journey. I'm going to get back to that, I swear, because I'd gotten some positive feedback right off the bat, and then I just fell off that wagon. My discipline right now, ridiculous. And I think you've heard me say that on a couple of episodes now. My discipline is out of whack, honestly. So trying to get back on that. But I may start just putting the content right on Twitter. Like, why not? Like, if I can just go ahead, put the whole podcast there, just audio podcast even, out on Twitter, why not do that? And then that could be just the way to go. I don't know. Maybe that's a better opportunity for the show to grow. And then it'll allow me more opportunities to do different types of content right on there. However, excuse me. What I know is that as a platform for visibility is much higher and comments. I'll admit I'm pretty, hard on myself and wanting things to grow. I'm always concerned that there's going to be some ruthless negative feedback. Now, in the Twitterverse, that is inevitable. People will post a video of puppies and rainbows, and someone will go, well, that puppy, was that a rescue? Was that adopted? What was it? Was it purebred? Really? It's a puppy frolicking in the rain. And then, oh, the rainbow. Well, do you know how climate is it? And it's just like, dude, it's puppies and rainbows. It's like a happy thing. Like, why do you have to make everything negative? So I could post something completely upbeat and positive, and someone will find some way to just be like, wah, wah. Come on. That's the only gripe that I have with Twitter is the negativity and the toxicity that it lives there. Facebook only gets toxic, I think, when people start bandying about on certain posts, right? Normally, it's pretty chill, I think. And Instagram, pretty chill most of the time, I don't know what the world of TikTok is really like, and I don't think I'm ever going to. Not something I'm particularly interested in, but nevertheless, hey, let me know. If you're interested in Twitter, go on over there, give me a follow, and maybe I'll just start putting the podcast stuff right out there, and maybe that will be a little bit of an inspiration for me to go ahead and do the video content. That just takes a lot longer to edit, honestly. It really does. Particularly like mixing everything together, and it does have to be done independent of just the audio piece. So basically, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago that I got a new audio interface. So for anyone who's interested in podcasting, like one of the things that I do is I use StreamYard, like I mentioned, and StreamYard allows you the opportunity to do 2 separate downloads of your episode or whatever content you have. And it's audio only, and then a video and audio together. I find that the audio is a little out of sync. So I'll actually go wired more often than not for the podcast to try and make sure that the audio syncs. But I always have to take the audio and slide it just a little bit to line up, my mouth with the actual word. That in of itself is a whole challenge because then any subsequent edits all have to be carefully lined up. So it's a little bit of a challenge in that regard. Anyone has any advice? Like I try to do OBS and I'm like completely lost with it. So, anyone who has any advice about that, please let me know. I'm certainly interested. Might have to get my inhaler again. But with the audio, what I do is I just put it into GarageBand, like simple, like GarageBand. I bring it over and I have the opening song and the closing song already built in. And all I'm doing is replacing like the main track. One of the things that's happened with the interface, the new interface, is for some reason I'm not getting a full stereo feed. So I have to do that in conversion, which I'm doing over on Auphonic, where I go ahead and I mix the sound to equalize all the levels. So just a little bit more behind the scenes stuff. So let's get into the topic. So I was mentioning Twitter. And there's a guy that I've heard his name for a decade or more now by the name of Mitch LaFon. And Mitch LaFon has been a music journalist, I guess is the way to describe it, a music personality of some sort. And he had posted something about a song. Now, this is a song that I personally really enjoy. But unless you were really into hair metal, you may not know it, right? You may not know it. So I did a whole hairband episode, but this isn't so much hairband episodes. It's more what it's like to make a mixtape, which I think is something that all of us can relate to. But the song that he mentioned, he said, I've been told that this is essential glam rock. excuse me, again, sorry guys. It's essential glam rock, and, you know, he knew it, but he wasn't necessarily like super, you know, aware of it or whatever it was. And it was kind of a mixture in the comments of, no, it's kind of mediocre, or, oh, I really love that. I really love that. It's just one of those songs that is almost a novelty, but it's great. So I thought about, if I were to make an essential hairband mixtape for someone, right, who maybe has not been exposed to it, is from a different generation. Like, if I were to make a hairband mixtape playlist, as they call it nowadays, for my kids, what songs would I put on there? Right? So I don't know about you, but I always considered making the mixtape a bit of an art. Because you want to take some things that are flow into each other, and you want to take it up and you want to take it down. You want different levels, right? You want a fast song, a slow song. Then you have, you know, your ballad, you have your mid-tempo, you have your banger, right? And you kind of mix it all up. But then you also want to take a mixture of things that are instantly recognizable, for lack of a better term, the hits, but also some deeper tracks, so that people who might not be familiar with a particular artist, other than the hits, will find something else to maybe, you know, sink their teeth into. So basically what I did was I broke it out into sections. And like the first section is kind of like, okay, quick primer on some things that are super obvious, super glaring, like everyone knows it, mixed in with some artists that people may or may not know much of, and what I would suggest that people listen to. But I'm also going to make some commentary of how someone else might have a different opinion about which song from which band you would use, particularly when we get into what I consider to be the top artists, right, of the genre. Oh, gosh. So just right off the bat, I just want to say, Van Halen is not in here listed as a hair band. Okay, I just want you to know there's no Van Halen. There are probably a couple other, you know, omissions that people are going to be quick to say, what? How come they're not on your list? Okay. It's just that if I was making the hairband mixtape, this is what I think I would put on for someone to say, hey, here we are. Here's kind of the history. As I'm thinking about it right now, I can think of 2 or 3 other songs that I would want to put on there. So I'll maybe make those an honorable mention, right? So here we are, the making of an essential hairband mixtape. So you want to come out right out of the gate with something strong. And by the way, I will put this out on Spotify if I get the chance, like in the next couple of days. Hopefully I'll be able to, so that you can go ahead and you can have this playlist ready to roll. Okay. So you want to come out with something that is classic, instantly recognizable, and totally will catch you right off the bat. So that if you're someone who's not familiar with the genre, the bands, you're going to go, oh, I know that one. Photograph by Def Leppard. I mean, that is the quintessential, like, you know, they call it the new wave of British metal, but also like the earliest phases of what would become the hair band, right? There's a couple of bands right around that time. One of whom is going to be on later on the list of what I call like the headliners of the mixtape, if you will. But Photograph is timeless, and it's something that is instantly recognizable. And that guitar, that riff, so great. So basically, if you want to kick off a hair metal mixtape, Def Leppard's the way to go. So the next song that I chose is a little bit off the beaten path as far as this particular band. I think other people would choose different songs. But for me, the best song by Dokken is actually, in my opinion, one of their most upbeat. And that's Burning Like a Flame for Back for the Attack. It is such a great chorus. The song builds beautifully. And of course, George Lynch is just killing it. Just absolutely killing it. I know some people will be like Alone Again or In My Dreams or Dream Warriors or stuff like that. No way. Burning Like a Flame is kick ass and one of their best songs. So next I have a band that is a little bit more, I guess, under the radar. And this song is going to be on another episode that I'll be doing somewhere down the road, hopefully with Carlos. And a lot of people think of songs like Scared or Teasin' Pleasin' by a band called Dangerous Toys. But their closing track on their debut album, Queen of the Nile, has an amazing vocal performance by Jason McMasters. Tremendous. It's kind of a great like pop metal song. And a lot of their stuff is really, really bluesy. And this is just not necessarily a shred song, but it has a stellar chorus and it builds throughout the song. And I think it is kind of a overlooked gem of that time period. So that's song number 3 on what I would say is essential hairband songs. So then, of course, you have to bring it down. You have to bring it down with a ballad. Now, there are a million hairband ballads that you could choose from, but I decided to go with a latter era band that was kind of on the cusp of how music was changing, like gradually going towards a more, I guess, alternative feel. So this is almost like alternative hair, alternative glam. And I'm talking about Love Is on the Way by Saigon Kick. This is also kind of a under the radar, just nugget of perfection. The harmonies between lead singer and the lead guitar player, I'm forgetting their names, but Saigon Kick kind of came in at the latter era of the hairband era, and they were excellent. And Love Is on the Way, I think, is a top-notch ballad. So now you want to bring up the level a little bit, right? Kind of a mid-tempo, if you will. So this is the song that was the impetus for The Post by Mitch Lafon. And that's by a band out of somewhere in one of the Scandinavian countries, Sweden or Finland. I don't know, Netherlands maybe. I'm talking about the Sleazebees. And they're really only, I think, U.S. minor radio like MTV hit. And that's Stranger Than Paradise. It's odd because not all the lyrics necessarily make sense, even the chorus. But what's so curious is that we're so used to like shredding guitar solos. And this has like the rest of the song is an electric based song, like electric, distorted guitars. And the solo is like an acoustic classical piece. It's so strange. And then it does kick into the electric guitar, but it's such a curious oddity of a song that it's always on my list of essential hairband songs. So if you've never heard it before, do yourself a favor. If you're looking for something deep, you've already come to the wrong place because this is hairbands. Now, there are a couple things on here that are a little bit deeper than others, and I'll mention them and why I think they're so good. But for the most part, it's meant to be fun. So our love is stranger than paradise. Any song, though, that has a whoa, 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 I will tell you, whoas, yeah, yeahs, that kind of stuff, it sells me every time. I absolutely love it. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. You have a good whoa, 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 I'm in. I am in. So now the next song, I would have to say, is probably the biggest travesty in music history. And that's not hyperbole, because we know that from basically from Quiet Riot through like the last days of the bands like the Slick Toxics and the Bang Tangos and, the Danger Dangers, that hair bands, glam metal bands, were the top selling bands, right? They were platinum sellers routinely and regularly. And this is a band that this song is probably the best hook, the best chorus of just about any song of the era. And it was at best a minor radio hit. It wasn't even top 40. And I don't know how that could be. because the band ended up having like a much higher charted ballad with Don't Close Your Eyes. So I'm talking about Kicks and Cold Blood. So here's a band that is right out of like the AC/DC style, right? A little bit of AC/DC, a little bit of Cheap Trick, a little blues, a little rock and roll, a great singer in Steve Whitman. Holy cow, Cold Blood. That chorus is so freaking good. It is the hook. It is the hook of all hooks. And I don't know how this was not on everyone's tongue. And like, I listened to all of this stuff back then. And I think that the start was a little bit, maybe it was a little bit too reminiscent. So, I said Cheap Trick, but it's really like AC/DC and like Aerosmith kind of thing, right? And maybe it started out too, I don't know, not bland, but it's a very simple, straightforward guitar riff. But man, you got to get to that pre-chorus, into that chorus, and it is about as good a song as you will get out of the entire era. So if I were making a mixtape, this might be the spot where you'd want to flip the tape. And now we're going to go to side 2. So just to recap, number 1, we have Def Leppard's Photograph, Burning Like a Flame by Dokken, Queen of the Nile by Dangerous Toys, Love is on the Way by Saigon Kick, Stranger Than Paradise by Sleazebees, and Cold Blood by Kicks. So now, again, the art of making the mixtape is now you want to start side 2. In my opinion, similarly to side 1. And I think the bands that get their pacing right know you got to come out of the gate on side 2 with another banger. So I thought, what better way? And admittedly, this is one of the best known songs by this band, but I don't know how you could have a mixtape without it on there. And I'm talking about Wait from White Lion. What a lineup. So Mike Tramp, of course, being Mike Tramp. And what's interesting is that I never thought he had a really great voice. He had a great rock voice. He had the right cadence, the style. He had that slight, accent that he has. I believe it's a Dutch accent. And I hear him now, 2023, doing these like smaller gigs and like a lot of acoustic sets. And his voice is excellent. It has a very nice timbre to it. But of course, Vito Bratta. We could do a whole episode on memorable guitar solos, and the guitar solo for Wait is a thing of beauty because it is in and of itself musical. It is melodic. You can hum the entire guitar solo. Now, I'm not going to do that now because of this cold, but you can just sing along. And when you can sing along to a guitar solo, you've captured something magical. Of course, on drums, you have Greg D'Angelo, who was the original drummer or one of the original drummers for Anthrax before Charlie Benante. And of course, you have James Lomenzo on bass, who is now a member, a full-time member, and he has been a touring member of the band before, but of Megadeth. So props to James Lomenzo. So I did say there was no Van Halen. However, we already know that once you're past 1984, David Lee Roth is a solo artist. And I think also kind of an underrated song from that era is Just Like Paradise from the Skyscraper record. This is full Greg Bissonette, Steve Vai, Billy Sheehan, and Diamond Dave, top freaking notch. I saw this tour. They were on fire. Like if you're going to go from a band with, the Van Halens, you know what I mean, and Michael Anthony, that's the lineup you want to get. You're replacing Guitar Hero with a Guitar Hero with Steve Vai. Just Like Paradise is also a great chorus. Just such a great chorus. And I think one of Dave's finest solo pieces. So now we want to bring it down again with a ballad. Now, there are a lot of different songs that I could have chosen by this band. And in fact, my high school yearbook quote was from this band, but not this song. So my yearbook quote was, "Is it all just wasted time?" Little sarcastic, little snark at high school. My senior year in particular, not the most fun of times. But the band is Skid Row, and this is off the Slave to the Grind record. Holy cow, that album was so good. And I remember I was going to get my senior picture taken, full mullet, but I had to wear like a suit and like tie, like whole thing with the mullet, earring, whole thing. And I remember hearing Monkey Business and that whole bluesy guitar. Whole lot of trouble coming, you know, like social circumcision. It's a great album. But that's not the song I chose here. No. Instead, if you're going to do a big rock ballad with an amazing vocal performance, of course you're going to go with Skid Row's I Remember You. Such a nice, simple guitar. The song itself does have one flaw in it. He does rhyme kiss with kiss, I believe, which you don't always want to do. But then that whole closing of it, the vocal performance, the notes that he's hitting, and back then he could hit them. So what's curious is that Skid Row is touring again, and they have this young man, Eric. I'm forgetting Eric's last name. I believe he's Swedish, and he can sing these songs effortlessly, like amazing. So if you want to hear a great rendition of I Remember You, you can still go see Skid Row today, and they're kicking ass. So if anyone out there knows Snake or Rachel, I'd love to have them on the podcast. They are one of my main gets that I'd love to have is Skid Row. So please put out the word. So then you want to go upbeat again. Now, I think there's another song that many people will choose from this band, but this is also going back in time a little bit to the very first hair bands that were breaking mainstream. And I think a lot of people would say, we're not going to take it. But no, I think I would put I Wanna Rock by Twisted Sister. If I really wanted to, I would have put Oh Come All Ye Faithful, but that's a Christmas song, and that wouldn't fit onto this mixtape. But I Wanna Rock is anthemic. It is, so Dee Snider's cadence on this song is great. Like, you know, staccato, but he's like holding the notes. Like the guy can sing. Like in many ways, kind of an underrated singer. His pure power that he has. Like full throat, full chest. He goes for it. Like he opens his mouth wide when he's singing. He is not holding anything back. And I Wanna Rock, I think, is the way to go. So then I have to put my favorites on there. So one of my all-time favorite bands, a band that certainly was of the time. They are still making music today. And I almost wanted to put on one of their songs from their most recent record. But I'm going with the classic here, Calling on You by Stryper. So yes, Christian glam metal heroes, Calling on You is still to this day a perfect song. Like, I don't care if you're not into the Christianity thing, if you didn't like the whole red and black vibe. What I'm telling you is that Calling on You, taken by itself, is a tremendous pop metal song. Like, it truly is perfect. A great guitar solo. They harmonize. Oz Fox and Michael Sweet harmonize on guitar. So very good together. And Calling on You, it's got everything you want. Great opening riff. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So then I want to bring it to a little bit more of a bluesy place. A little bit more classic rock vibe, if you will. And when you have these belters, so think about this, right? I Remember You, Sebastian Bach, he can rip it. He can rip on the microphone. Dee Snider, he can rip it. Michael Sweet from Stryper, like unparalleled. But this guy has a very different kind of voice. Very bluesy, very scratchy, kind of an odd tone, and I don't think anyone else sounds like this guy. But here's a band that I never really truly embraced at the time. And a couple of my bands, we did a few of their songs, but it was always like someone brings a song, you do it, and then you bring one of your own songs and we do it, kind of back and forth, right? That's what being a team player is about. But I never really loved the songs from this band. Now, in hindsight, I was missing out. And I think part of it was because the image and honestly, his voice, it didn't fit what I really was looking for at that time. Image was important with the hair bands. I will fully admit it. But Little Susie by Tesla. Now, I went back and forth on a number of different songs that I could have chose. If I wanted to do another ballad, I could have gone with something like Love Song, which just builds up and it's just a kick-ass song at the end, right? So less of a ballad by the time you get to the last third of the song. What You Give, also a big anthemic chorus. They have a lot going for them. But I felt like Little Susie, that's the right song for this mixtape. So now let's go back to another singer and a technically proficient band. One that was born out of a passion project of a guy who got kicked out of Kiss by the name of Vinnie Vincent, who all the members of his band basically up and left him. And two of them went on to start a band called Slaughter. Again, I could have gone a couple of different ways, but why not go with their first single, the one that really set the stage for them? And I'm talking about Up All Night. Dana Strum and Mark Slaughter, Blaze Elias on drums, and their guitar player who unfortunately lost his life, Something Kelly. Great band. That debut record was kind of surprising because it was later in the hairband era, but at the same time, like it was of the time, but they had something unique and a little bit different. And I think a lot of that had to do with, their musical sensibilities and their actual influences. So got to put on Slaughter with Up All Night. And now the next band might be one of the most divisive of the time, in part because some little show called Beavis and Butthead. And basically a lot of darts literally and figuratively being thrown their way. Looking at you, Metallica. And I'm talking about the band that probably of everyone on the list could play circles around just about anyone else on here, with very few exceptions. I'm talking about Winger. You want to talk about a band that has everything going for it. And I thought about all the different songs that I could choose. But I'm going right off of their debut album, which I had on vinyl, by the way. I sold it a few years ago. I'm going with Madeleine. Some people go, she's only 17, headed for a heartbreak, stuff like that. But Madeleine, it's just, even just saying Madeleine versus Madeline, right? And how Kip Winger sings it. So anyone who doesn't know, Kip Winger was in Alice Cooper's band. He was also a classically trained ballet dancer. He plays bass, multiple instruments, can sing, ridiculous. I think I've said it before. I hate Kip Winger, but I don't. He's absolutely excellent. So Madeleine by Winger closes out side 2 of this mixtape. So some of you might say, well, wait a minute. You've missed out on a lot of classic hair bands. So that's where I said at the top of the show, I have this other little category that I'm going to share with you now. And that is the songs that people, I think, would have put on their lists versus what I would put on my list of those bands. So these are, I would say, the top maybe 4 or 5 bands of all time that are in this genre that are not Def Leppard, right? Because Def Leppard is still going strong, obviously, and did a tour with a couple of the bands that are on the list, but they were also somewhat just outside that hair band thing. And I think it's because they did come out of Britain when they did. Their earliest records were really before just about any of these guys were putting out music, and definitely in that vein of AC/DC originally, particularly the whole Pete, I'm forgetting the original guitar player before Phil Collins was in the band. Anyway, they're a little bit different. They really are. But these are the heavy hitters, like basically just about your, I think, Mount Rushmore of glam metal, right? So the band that kind of kicked it all off, coming out of that LA scene, was, of course, Quiet Riot. Now, I think everyone's going to go, well, of course, you're going to put on Mama, We're All Crazy Now, right? Or maybe Metal Health. No, not me. Not me. I would put on a song from, I think, Quiet Riot 3, and that's a song called The Wild and the Young. The Wild and the Young is such a strong entry in their total discography. It's latter era. I'm sure some people will be like, no, I don't really like it, whatever. It is like Kevin Dubrow, he had his troubles. What a singer. Like he could really belt, and he could write, and the band was tight, like really tight. And of course, this was the band that was, co-founded by Randy Rhoads. I mean, excellent. And, I know the band is still playing now, and Rudy Sarzo is back with the band. And I think he's the only one that is from that kind of original era. Because I think most of them are gone now. Frankie Benali is gone, and Kevin Dubrow is gone. I don't know where Carlos Vazo is, and I don't know, but I would not choose anything off of Metal Health. Instead, like I said, Quiet Riot 3, The Wild and the Young. So another band coming right out of LA. Actually, all these bands are LA bands, right? They're the ones. Another one that came out of the gate in like 1982 or whatever it was. And some people would say the song that you want to put on is going to be Round and Round by Rat. Excellent song. Stephen Pearcy, still going strong. Never had a strong voice, but had the right voice, right? Sometimes you don't have to be this technically gifted singer. You have to have the right voice for the music and how you're conveying the songs, right? So I wouldn't go with Round and Round. I would go off of I Want a Woman. That is an excellent song off of, oh gosh, what is it called? Is it called Reach for the Sky? Let's see. Rat. I believe it was their fourth album. Reach for the Sky, their fourth album. Yes. I Want a Woman was released as a single, but I actually think it's one of their best songs. It's so upbeat. So again, I like kind of the upbeat songs. You know what I mean? I think that was what it was meant to be. And I think that, some of the stuff can be like Round and Round is kind of sleazy and dark. Now, I Want a Woman is too, but it's just a different vibe. And, that is way more my vibe than Round and Round or, You're in Love or, what's it called? There was another one off of Out of the Cellar. Wanted Man, never really my thing. And then off of Invasion of Privacy, Lay It Down, right? So Lay It Down actually came out before You're in Love, but Lay It Down was okay. But no, I Want a Woman's the one I'm putting on the list. So then one of my favorite bands of the era, and in fact, I like them probably, other than Stryper, I think my favorite band of that time is Warrant. Again, I was a singer, right? So I love these great, strong singers. And Janie Lane, I'll do an episode on just Janie one of these days, was such a gifted vocalist, but also wrote all the music. And as much as some of the members of the band had sometimes been maligned, even by their own producer, as far as like their technical chops, no one doubted Janie's songwriting and his singing. So I'm sure people are going to be like, oh, you're going to put on Down Boys. Or maybe their biggest hit, Heaven, which reached number 2, didn't make number 1, which is bullshit, by the way. Or maybe Cherry Pie, the song that really sank Janie into a depression that he never really got out of. But I was going back and forth between two songs that I recommend, and I'm going to put them on the playlist. I think I've chosen. So it was between Thin Disguise and Bed of Roses. And if you want proof of Janie's ability as a songwriter and putting words together in a poetic way, Thin Disguise and Bed of Roses are two of the ways to go. So I always lean towards Thin Disguise. Great guitar work, great riff, and a great, like the lyrics in that chorus. It's a thin disguise, living our lives behind a thin disguise. One of these days, if I've got the time, I'll show you what I'm like on the inside. You go, Jani Lane. You go. May he rest in peace. So then we're coming to probably the number 2 hairband of the era. And people are going to say, well, you got to have the ballad. You got to have the number 1 hit. You got to have Every Rose Has Its Thorn. Poison, only band of the hair bands, with maybe the exception of Def Leppard, with number 1 hits. Now, of course, David Lee Roth is on here, but that was with, obviously, Van Halen. So, excuse me. Every Rose Has Its Thorn is not it for me. And in fact, that's not the song from, Open Up and Say Ah that I would choose. If I was going to show someone, the true essence of Poison, it wouldn't be Talk Dirty to Me. It wouldn't be Nothing But a Good Time. No, it would be Fallen Angel, because this is CeCe DeVille's riffage at its very best. The guitar work on that song is excellent. And it's a great narrative story. Sure, it's one that's been done to death. But when you put all the elements of the band together, Fallen Angel, to me, is the quintessential Poison track. And I stand by that, and that's why it's very prominent here on the Hairband mixtape. And finally, the band, the one, the only, Motley Crue. And people are going to say, Kickstart My Heart or Livewire. No, it is from Dr. Feelgood, and I did briefly consider the Greatest Hits era, Primal Scream, which is basically their version of Zeppelin. But no, I think the most fun song on Dr. Feelgood is Girl, Don't Go Away Mad. Girl, Just Go Away. The chorus is so great. This was certainly Motley Crue at their very best. Bob Rock's production, and honestly, probably Nikki Sixx's best writing. I know a lot of people were really into the John Corabi record. Even all these years later, I haven't been able to really sit down and get into it. But Girl Don't Go Away Mad is my choice for Motley Crue track. Now, mind you, I did consider Wild Side off of Girls, 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 because that is an excellent Tommy Lee driven song. When I sit down at the kids' drum kit that's behind me, Wild Side's one that I go with. Because it's for me, I'm not really a drummer, and there's I don't know, I don't even know what it's called, but like there's this way, like a tom hit that's in there that is just kind of off time, and like it's on like the 3 or something. I don't know, but it's like an offbeat thing, and I just work at that because there's just something about it. It's got such a groove to it. So I would definitely go with that. If not, it's Girl, Don't Go Away. So my voice has been trailing off throughout this episode. I do apologize. I had a coughing fit. I had to literally jump off for about 5 minutes. So I got to go find that piece of the tape. Find that piece of the recording and chop it up into little pieces. But I think it's always fun, particularly when we're looking at, a holiday week, a holiday weekend. I like to have a great playlist out in the back. And I'm going to put this one together. I'm going to post it on Spotify. I'm also going to put all the songs in, the body of the actual podcast, like the summary for the episode. Put all the songs in there. And hey, take them, enjoy them. If you're someone who's into this kind of music, are there any that you were not really familiar with? I'd really be curious to know. And what would you put on there? Maybe you're going to say, well, what about the Bullet Boys? Smooth Up In Ya. That is a good one. I did consider it. I did briefly consider Naughty Naughty by Danger Danger. I couldn't do it. No Bang Tango. Someone Like You, I think is what it's called, or whatever it is. I know there's no bands like Scorpions on here, and you're going to go, well, what about Guns N' Roses? Guns N' Roses is something else. They are of LA. They came up to the scene. These were their contemporaries. But Guns N' Roses is a different band than a hair band. The music that they played was different. How they played it was different. All they had in common was the lifestyle. And like, well, what about LA Guns? And a song like, what about Jane? It's good. One of the hits. It was okay. It was okay. Cinderella. Okay, so if I'm going to put a Cinderella track on here, it's going to be, what is it? Mr. Politician. Oh, gosh. I listen to it all the time. It's got the saxophone on it. Shelter Me. Shelter Me by Cinderella is the song that I would go with. We all need a little shelter. That is a great, great song. I'm trying to think who else of the era that I probably or could have or even should have put on the list. I think of the hair bands. I listened to some Love Hate recently. Why do you think they call it dope? Jizzy Pearl has been in a couple of different bands. There's bands like Hurricane that you could put on there. There's so many. There's so many. But these, I think, are the top ones. I don't think I missed any of the major acts that I would say should be there. I mean, Nelson, Love and Affection, big hit for them. I mean, I could consider them hair bands. I mentioned Vinnie Vincent Invasion. And of course, Bobby Rock was the drummer for Vinnie Vincent Invasion. He went to join, Nelson. You have bands like Kingdom Come, which basically were Led Zeppelin ripoffs. You can say, well, what about Whitesnake? Now, Whitesnake started out in the 70s. I mean, that's really coming off of the tree of the Zeppelins and the Deep Purples, right? They weren't really hair bands until they kind of changed their image to match. Same thing with Aerosmith. Aerosmith was already an established band before this all even started, right? Same thing with Scorpions, too. I mean, in some ways, you could say that, that would also exclude Def Leppard from being on the list completely, to be perfectly honest. And Bon Jovi, like Def Leppard, are of the time, but something unique and different. And their music evolved as they went on to something very different. With a band like Def Leppard, it was out of necessity when Rick Allen lost his arm. But Bon Jovi has consistently kind of upgraded and updated their sound as they've got along too, becoming like basically adult contemporary. And that happened, with Keep the Faith. Honestly, it was a more of a straight ahead rock record than it was anything that was reminiscent of this time. So anyway, I think I've captured everyone in one way or another. So, I mean, I guess your honorable mentions to me would be like, the Bullet Boys, Danger Danger. I think that's about it. I think those are the only other ones that I would consider. But yeah, anyway, let me know your list. What are your favorite bands? What are your favorite songs? And what should be on the mixtape that I haven't already included? Because I'm sure I've missed something. So let me know. How do you let me know? You can email me at stuckinthemiddlepod@yahoo.com. You can head over to Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube at StuckPodX. You can head over to the Facebook page, Stuck in the Middle, a Gen X podcast. Please like, comment, share, leave 5-star reviews, and most importantly, please subscribe to the podcast. So until next time, later, slackers.